My name is Ryan. I'm 27 years old, and if you ask my family, I'm the one who never really made it. That's how they see me, anyway. I didn't go to college, didn't get a fancy degree, didn't walk across any polished campus stage while pomp and circumstance echoed through a hall of beaming parents. No, I went a different route. I started working right out of high school, apprenticed with a local electrician, worked long hours, learned the trade, and now I run my own contracting business. I have a steady client base, decent savings, and my own apartment in the city. It's not glamorous, but I'm proud of what I've built. The only problem is that none of that matters to my family, not when they've got him. My younger brother, Caleb, the golden boy. Caleb just graduated summa cum laude from a prestigious university with a double major in political science and economics. He already had job offers lined up before the ink dried on his diploma. My parents couldn't stop bragging. Mom had been posting countdowns to his graduation dinner on Facebook for weeks, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime event, like it was some kind of royal coronation. I hadn't been particularly eager to attend, but Caleb called me personally a few days before and said, "Come on, man. It would mean a lot if you were there." That was rare. Caleb's always been wrapped up in his own world, but he sounded sincere. So I took the night off, put on a clean dress shirt, and drove 45 minutes out to the fancy Italian restaurant Mom had picked for the celebration. It was one of those places where the lighting is low, the menus are leather-bound, and even the bread has its own plate. The kind of place that smells like wealth and whispers. I walked in a few minutes early, scanning the dining area until I saw them. Mom, Dad, Caleb, my two aunts and uncles, both sets of grandparents, and Caleb's girlfriend. Everyone was seated at a long table with crisp white linens, laughing and sipping wine. The waiter was pouring glasses as I approached. Then I noticed it. There were no empty seats. I paused, standing at the end of the table, trying to figure out if maybe a chair had just been shifted or moved. Mom glanced up at me, blinked like I was an unexpected customer interrupting her meal, and then looked me up and down. Her lips curled into a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, Ryan, you made it." I nodded slowly, still standing there like a fool. "Yeah, Caleb invited me." She gave a little laugh and waved a hand toward the end of the table. "Well, we didn't expect you to actually come. There's no room at the main table, but I'm sure the waiter can seat you somewhere. Maybe by the bar." She turned back to him, then added with a tone soaked in condescension, "You didn't go to college, so you don't belong at the main table anyway." It hit me like a slap, blunt, embarrassing, and loud in a room that had suddenly gone too quiet. I glanced at Caleb. He looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The waiter, an older man with a kind face, looked between us, clearly unsure of how to proceed. I could feel heat rising in my face. I wanted to leave right then, but something in me, some quiet stubbornness, kept my feet rooted to the floor. "It's fine," I said tightly. "Whatever works." The waiter guided me to a small two-person table near the back, practically pressed against a decorative wine rack. I sat alone while the rest of my family toasted Caleb with champagne and passed around appetizers I wasn't offered. Every now and then, someone would glance my way, then quickly look back. I was a ghost in my own family's celebration. When the waiter came around again, he looked genuinely apologetic. "Would you like to order, sir?" I shook my head. "I'll wait." And I did. I sat there through course after course. They laughed loudly at stories I wasn't a part of, clinked glasses, and posed for pictures. Caleb in the middle, Mom and Dad beaming beside him. At one point, I heard Mom say to the waiter, "We'll take the 2014 Emerone." Yes, the reserve bottle. She said it like she was pronouncing a magic spell, like just saying the name gave her class. Hours passed. Not once did anyone invite me over, ask how I was doing, or even pretend to include me in the conversation. The longer I sat there, the heavier everything felt. The years of being second best, the quiet jabs, the dismissive comments at holidays, the way my parents always introduced Caleb with his full list of achievements and me as just our oldest. This dinner was just the latest chapter in a long book I never asked to be written. When dessert came around, some kind of elaborate chocolate thing with gold flakes, I noticed Caleb glance toward me. His expression shifted for just a second, like maybe he felt a little bad. But then Mom leaned in and whispered something in his ear, and he laughed. That was it. That was the moment I decided. Not to explode, not to cause a scene, but to watch, to wait. The bill came not long after. The waiter, clearly uncomfortable, walked back over with a sleek black folder and a tight smile. Will this all be on one check? He asked. My family paused. They all looked toward Dad, who looked toward Mom, who reached for her purse like she'd rehearsed it. But then she turned to me. Ryan, she said smoothly, you brought your card, didn't you? I blinked. Excuse me. Well, we thought you'd want to cover it. You know, as a gesture, since you've been doing well with your little business and all. She said it sweetly, like she was offering me a great honor. It's only fair that you contribute something to your brother's big night. The audacity was stunning. She hadn't even given me a chair at the table, and now she wanted me to pay for the whole thing? The waiter quietly cleared his throat. Total comes to $2,800, he said, not including tip. I stood up slowly, pushed in my chair, and reached for my jacket. Where are you going? Mom asked sharply. I shrugged it on, then looked at the waiter, offering him a small, apologetic smile. Not the one who doesn't belong, I said simply. And with that, I walked out. The door swung closed behind me with a satisfying click. I didn't look back. But trust me, I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I drove home that night with a strange mix of emotions buzzing in my chest. Anger, shame, clarity. But mostly anger. Not the kind that burns hot and explodes. The cold kind. The kind that settles in and simmers, that sharpens your focus instead of clouding it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into my steering wheel. I just gripped it tighter and let every memory flood back, stacking itself neatly on top of the one from tonight. That graduation dinner wasn't an isolated moment. It was the latest in a long line of quiet humiliations I'd learned to swallow. I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, thinking about how my mom had looked at me, like I was some background extra in her movie, like I wasn't her son. And the part that stung the most? Caleb didn't stop her. He didn't say, hey, Ryan should sit with us. He didn't tell the waiter to grab another chair. He didn't even text afterward to ask why I left. And maybe I shouldn't have expected him to. Caleb had always been the favorite. Ever since we were kids, it was like he wore a spotlight. Straight A's, piano recitals, student council. Meanwhile, I struggled with math, hated crowds, and preferred taking things apart in the garage. I wasn't dumb, I just wasn't him. And that meant Mom never really saw me. There's a specific kind of pain in being tolerated by your own parents. A few days passed before I heard anything from them. Not a call, not a text, nothing. It was like I'd never even been there. Then, that Friday, I got a message from my dad. Hey, we need you to come over and help us fix the ceiling fan in the den. It's acting up again. No, how are you? No mention of the dinner. Just another casual request, like I was the family handyman they could call whenever something needed tightening or replacing. I left the message on read. That afternoon, Mom sent me a follow-up. Your father asked you to help. Please don't be difficult. I stared at that one for a long time. Don't be difficult. That was her way of saying, don't remind us that we treat you like garbage. Just keep doing your job. Eventually, I replied, busy with clients this week. Hire someone. She didn't answer. The next time I saw them was at a family barbecue hosted by my Uncle Dave a few weekends later. I debated not going, but Uncle Dave had always been decent to me, and I knew my grandparents would be there too. So I showed up. This time, I came prepared. Clean jeans, fresh haircut, brought a bottle of decent scotch as a gift. I knew what was coming. I just didn't expect it to start so fast. Look who actually decided to join us. Mom said the moment I stepped into the backyard. She was standing near the grill, sunglasses perched on her head, wine glass already in hand. Hopefully you don't walk out before dessert this time. I forced a smile. Good to see you too. Caleb was already holding court by the patio, telling some story about his new job offer in DC. Everyone was hanging on his every word. My grandparents gave me warm hugs and asked how business was going, but that was it. No one asked about the jobs I'd completed or the apartment I'd renovated recently. Caleb's girlfriend even made a snide joke when I said I'd parked a few blocks away. Oh yeah, I forgot. Contractors don't get valet service. I brushed it off. I'd learned to let those things roll off my back, at least on the outside. Later in the evening, my dad cornered me while I was pouring myself a drink. Listen, Ryan, he said, his tone low and slightly annoyed. I don't know what happened at the dinner, but your mother's been really upset. She planned that night for weeks. I stared at him. There wasn't even a seat for me. He blinked. Well, you weren't exactly the focus of the night. It was Caleb's celebration. And yet you expected me to pay for it. He waved a hand dismissively. That was your mother's idea. She thought it would be a kind gesture. It was a $2,800 bill, Dad. Exactly. You can afford it. There it was. That assumption that I owed them something. Simply because I wasn't a failure. Because I had money, I should help. But I wasn't invited as family. I was invited as a wallet. I didn't respond. I just walked away and joined Uncle Dave near the smoker. We talked about cars, about a job he needed help with at his cabin, and for a little while, I almost forgot about everything else. Until dessert came. That's when Mom raised her glass and announced to everyone, I just want to thank Caleb again for making this family so proud. It's so rare that someone from our background rises to such heights. You've given us all hope. Then she turned and looked directly at me. Maybe someday Ryan will surprise us too. The silence that followed was suffocating. Caleb chuckled awkwardly. My aunt coughed. Someone dropped a fork. I stood there, holding my drink, wondering if this was the moment I should snap. Should I call her out? Should I remind her that my business had put me in the top income bracket last year? That I'd bought and flipped 3 homes while she still made monthly payments on their car? Instead, I set the glass down and walked away again. But this time, I wasn't leaving to lick my wounds. I was done pretending. I started thinking, planning. Because the truth is, I had something they didn't know. Something I hadn't shared. And that something? It was about to change everything. That night after the barbecue, I couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't because I was sad or hurt. I was wired. My mother's final jab about me surprising them someday played on a loop in my head like a bad song you can't turn off. The gall of it. The smugness. I wasn't just being dismissed anymore. I was being mocked in front of people who once changed my diapers. But while I was trying to shake it off, something strange happened. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with an email alert from my accountant. Subject line, urgent, withdrawal request flagged. I opened it, confused. The message said that a large withdrawal attempt had been flagged from one of my business accounts, an account that was strictly for materials and payroll. The amount? $8,750. My heart stopped. I called the bank's 24-hour fraud line immediately. The woman on the other end was calm and efficient. She confirmed that yes, someone had attempted to initiate a wire transfer using my company credentials. Thankfully, the fraud filter held it up because the IP address was unfamiliar and the beneficiary details didn't match any existing vendors. I logged into my account. There, in my access logs, was an IP address I didn't recognize, but the recovery email used to verify the transaction attempt? That was mine. Or it used to be. Except now, my recovery email had a secondary backup I hadn't added. My stomach dropped. I spent the rest of the night unraveling it. It turned out someone had managed to access my business email, the one I used for billing and client contracts, and tried to reroute funds by posing as me. They'd even drafted a fake invoice from a made-up supplier. It was sloppy, reckless, and it only made sense once I started thinking about who had access to my personal laptop. One I used for work stuff years ago, the one I gave to my parents as a loaner back when they were dealing with their busted desktop. I never got it back. My fingers were ice as I texted Caleb the next morning. Hey, quick question. Have you been using the old laptop I gave Mom and Dad? He responded in less than a minute. Yeah, needed it for something. What? No guilt. No hesitation. I didn't even have to ask. It all clicked. Caleb, the golden boy, the family prodigy, had accessed my personal files, somehow gotten into my business records, and tried to steal from me. And if the fraud filter hadn't caught it, he would have gotten away with it. And no one would have believed me if I accused him, not after the way my family pedestalized him. I didn't respond right away. I needed to process it. I needed proof. And I got it fast. I had my tech guy, Colin, a buddy I'd worked with on security installs, help me retrieve the access logs, including timestamps, IP matching, and even the attempt to change my backup recovery email. It all pointed back to one thing, a login attempt from my parents' home Wi-Fi network. From the laptop I had once generously given them. But that wasn't the worst part. Later that afternoon, I got a call from my mom. Hey, sweetheart. She started, like nothing had happened. I know things have been tense lately, but Caleb told me you reached out to him? Something about the laptop. I kept my voice even. Yeah, someone used it to try to access my business account. There was a pause. Then she laughed. Laughed. Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. Caleb wouldn't do something like that. I have logs, Mom. Another pause. This time longer. Well, her voice dropped, like she was trying to pivot the conversation. You did leave a lot of your old stuff on there. Maybe you should have wiped it first. I blinked. Are you blaming me for this? She sighed, and her tone shifted into that clipped, scolding edge she always used when I dared talk back as a teenager. Look, Ryan, I don't know what you're fishing for, but this is not the kind of thing we air out to the rest of the family. You always have to create drama. Your brother just graduated, he's under a lot of pressure, and now you're accusing him of stealing. I'm not accusing. I'm telling you what happened. Then maybe you should take it up with your bank, not your brother. She hung up. Just like that. I stood there, phone still in hand, not even surprised anymore. That call wasn't about truth. It was about containment, damage control. Not because she believed Caleb was innocent, but because, deep down, I think she knew he did it. And she didn't care. Or worse, she thought he was entitled to it. That's when I knew. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was betrayal. Not just from Caleb, but from my entire family. They didn't see me as their son or sibling. I was a resource, a backup plan, an ATM with a heartbeat. The one they could quietly disrespect because they believed I'd never walk away. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't even going to confront Caleb directly. I was going to do what they'd never expect from the lesser son. I was going to outsmart them. Because while they'd been playing favorites, I'd been building something. And now I was going to use it. After that call with my mother, everything felt different. There wasn't a sudden explosion, no dramatic falling out, just this awful silence. The kind that creeps in when something important has died and nobody wants to admit it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the yelling, storming off sense. I was just numb. That cold, hollow numbness that sinks into your bones when you finally understand you're not part of the family you thought you were. I went to work like usual the next day, but I moved on autopilot. I installed light fixtures in a new condo, took measurements for a kitchen remodel, answered emails. But I wasn't really there. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd tense, thinking maybe someone in the family had come to their senses, that Caleb would call and apologize, that my mom would admit she was wrong, that maybe, just maybe, someone would choose me for once. They didn't. Not that day. Not that week. Not even when I sent a short message to the family group chat. I have evidence that someone used my business email and account to attempt a wire transfer. It was blocked. This is serious. Whoever did it needs to come forward before I take legal steps. No one replied. Not even a question. They read it. I saw the read receipts and went on with their lives. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the fact that it didn't seem to matter to any of them. That they could ignore something so serious, so deliberate, and pretend it hadn't happened. All because it was easier to keep Caleb on his pedestal and me in the shadows. The following weekend, I visited my parents' house. Not to fight, not to confront. I told them I needed to pick up some tools I'd left in the garage years ago. I didn't bother ringing the bell. I had a key. The house smelled like furniture polish and lemon air freshener. Familiar, almost comforting. I walked past the living room, where a giant canvas of Caleb in his graduation gown now hung above the fireplace. My mother had framed it in gold. In the garage, I found the old laptop on a shelf, half covered in dust. I slipped it into my backpack and left without saying a word. Back at home, I spent hours going through the files. I pulled the hard drive, cloned it, and gave it to Colin. Find everything, I told him, even deleted files. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded. While he worked, I started cleaning out my apartment. Not because I was moving, not yet, but because I needed clarity. I boxed up the family photos, birthday cards from years past. That old wood carving Caleb made me in 7th grade that I'd kept on my shelf for reasons I no longer understood. I packed it all away. Every reminder of a version of my family that never really existed. A few days later, I went to visit my grandparents. They lived about 30 minutes outside the city, in a small cottage surrounded by apple trees. My grandfather had taught me how to rewire a fuse box when I was 12. He was one of the few people in my family who had ever treated me like I mattered. When I arrived, they were sitting on the porch sipping sweet tea. My grandmother's face lit up when she saw me. "Oh, Ryan, we were just talking about you." I smiled, but it was tight. "Yeah? What about?" She patted the seat beside her. "Your mom's worried, sweetie. She says you've been distant, and that you've been saying some things about Caleb." I sat down slowly. "Did she mention what Caleb did?" "She said you accused him of stealing from you." that it was some kind of misunderstanding, that you overreacted. I looked at my grandfather. He didn't say anything, just watched me carefully. I took a breath. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He tried to move money out of my business account using my credentials. I have proof. And Mom told me to take it up with the bank. My grandmother's smile faded. Oh, Grandpa spoke for the first time. Do you have the police involved? Not yet. He nodded slowly. You should. The rest of the visit was quiet. Kind, but stiff. Like they didn't quite know what to say, or didn't want to believe it. I left before dinner, hugging them both tightly. That drive home was when I realized I'd hit bottom. Not financially, not in terms of success, but emotionally. I had no one left to lean on. No one in my family believed me, or wanted to. I was the villain in their story now, the one who was ruining Caleb's future with wild accusations. I stayed home the next day. I didn't go to job sites, didn't answer emails. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, and I started writing. Everything. Dates, messages, conversations, transactions. I created a timeline, documented the evidence, laid it out like a case file. Not to go nuclear, not yet, but because I knew I needed to stop pretending things would fix themselves. That evening, Colin texted me. You're going to want to see this. Meet tomorrow. The message made my pulse spike. Something told me he'd found what I was hoping for, or maybe what I feared. But even as I stared at the screen, my heart already racing, I felt a strange sense of calm. Because I wasn't the one spiraling anymore. They were. And I was finally, getting ready to take control. The next morning, I met Colin at a quiet cafe near the tech firm where he worked. He was already at a back table with his laptop open, sipping black coffee and looking unusually serious. When I sat down, he turned the screen toward me. Buckle up, he said. He'd recovered more than I expected. Deleted files, cached logins, even old drafts of the fake invoice Caleb had created. And then there it was, the smoking gun. A document labeled test_invoice_draft 2, dated just 3 days before the wire transfer attempt, with Caleb's name still in the metadata. Not only that, but the file had been accessed from an IP address that matched one of Caleb's known devices, a laptop registered under a student license from his university account. Colin had cross-verified the IP with some public information he could pull from school forums Caleb had posted on years ago. This isn't just shady, Colin said. It's criminal. He handed me a USB drive with all the files and logs neatly organized. I sat there for a moment, quiet. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I think I am. Because finally, I wasn't playing defense. I wasn't sitting in a corner hoping my family would see me, hoping they'd listen, hoping someone would do the right thing. I had the truth, and I had it in a form they couldn't dismiss. Still, I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Instead, I went back to work, with purpose. That week, I landed a huge contract for a series of luxury townhouses outside the city. It was the kind of job that came with media coverage and a fat payday. I'd built enough credibility over the years that I didn't have to pitch hard. They knew my name. My work spoke for itself. I upgraded my website, hired 2 full-time assistants, bought new equipment, rented a small office space downtown with a glass door and my logo in sleek lettering. Ryan Archer Contracting, clean, reliable, trusted. It felt surreal, like I was finally stepping into the version of myself I'd been working toward for years, but without the weight of trying to prove it to anyone who didn't want to see it. And then something unexpected happened. I got a call from a local magazine that covered small business owners and entrepreneurs. One of the editors had heard about my townhouse project and wanted to do a feature, a local success story spotlight. They came to the job site, took pictures, interviewed me. I told them about my start, my apprenticeship, the slow grind of building a business from scratch. They asked about family. I smiled and said, let's just say I come from a place where I learned the hard way that success doesn't always mean support. The article came out the following month. It wasn't viral, but it got attention. Clients started referencing it when they reached out. And of course, my mom saw it. She texted me one morning, out of nowhere. Saw the article. You look good in a hard hat. Maybe now you'll get some respect. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. Just another dig wrapped in a compliment. I didn't reply. I was done begging for recognition. Instead, I forwarded the article to my grandfather. He called me an hour later. I read every word. He said, his voice hoarse with emotion. You've built something to be proud of. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. That meant more than any Facebook post ever could. I was rising, and they couldn't ignore it anymore. Caleb might have had a diploma, but I had something far more dangerous: receipts, success, and independence. And now, I was in a position they didn't expect, a place of power with nothing to lose. And just when I thought I might leave things be, a wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox. White envelope, gold trim, my full name written in ornate cursive. You are cordially invited to the engagement party of Caleb Archer and Natalie Klein. The date was 2 weeks away. The location? A private country club. Expensive. Exclusive. I turned the card over. At the bottom, in small print, formal attire. Adults only. Contributions toward the celebration are welcome. There it was. Subtle. Slimy. They were trying again, pulling me back in, expecting I'd come, smile, hand over a fat envelope, and pretend none of this had happened. But they didn't know that I already had a plan, because I wasn't just going to show up. I was going to make sure this time they'd never forget I was there. I didn't RSVP. I didn't call to decline either. Instead, I pinned the invitation to my fridge and looked at it like a blueprint. Because that's what it was. Not a celebration, not a peace offering, but a message. One last jab. They were daring me to show up, daring me to either cave or be forgotten again. And the thing about me? I never respond the way they expect. The next few days, I went into full planning mode. I knew this couldn't be some petty act. It had to be clean, undeniable, and most importantly, public. Not just for the satisfaction, but because if there was anything my mother hated more than being called out, it was being embarrassed in front of people who mattered. And this country club engagement party? That was going to be her crowning moment. High society, catered food, elegant outfits, polite applause. She wasn't throwing it for Caleb. She was throwing it through him. He was the means. The real guest of honor was her ego. I just had to find the right way to crack it. Then came a lucky break. 2 days before the party, I had lunch with a longtime client, Meredith. She was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who'd hired me a few years ago to redo her home office. Over time, we'd become something between friends and colleagues. She knew I wasn't close with my family, but I'd never gone into the full story. That day, though, I told her everything. Not the dramatic flourishes, just the facts. The financial betrayal, the denial, the silent treatment, the wedding invite. She listened without interrupting. And when I was done, she leaned forward and asked, "Do you want to burn them? Or just prove they can't touch you anymore?" I blinked. What's the difference? One is emotional. The other is permanent. Then she slid her business card across the table and flipped it over. On the back, she scribbled a name, Jonathan Marsh, CPA. "Call him," she said. "Tell him I sent you. He handles financial forensics." Quietly, it took me 5 minutes after I got home to dial the number. Jonathan was older, sharp-eyed, and efficient. After I explained the situation and forwarded the USB drive Colin had created, he asked, "Has your business ever been formally audited?" "No," I said. "I've kept everything clean." "Good. Because if there's any mess in your books, it'll reflect badly once this goes public." I sat up straighter. "Public?" He didn't smile. "We're not just documenting a crime here, Mr. Archer. We're documenting intent. Your brother accessed a protected system using unauthorized credentials. That's corporate fraud, attempted embezzlement, and identity theft." He paused. "Depending on how far he went, possibly federal." My jaw tightened. "I don't want him in jail." "Then don't press charges. But build the case anyway. That way, you decide how far it goes." For the next week, I worked double time, business during the day, strategy at night. With Jonathan's help, I compiled everything into a single clean, undeniable report. Timestamps, access logs, metadata, bank statement flags, a detailed timeline, all packaged in a professional binder with a cover page titled Unauthorized Access and Financial Misconduct. Internal summary, Ryan Archer Contracting LLC. The plan wasn't to shout. It was to drop the truth like a weight, quietly, calmly, where it couldn't be ignored. 2 days before the party, I got another message from my mother. "Still haven't heard if you're coming. We're finalizing the seating chart. Let me know." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the report. Express mail, signature required, addressed directly to her home in a sleek white envelope. No note, no threats, just the facts. And then I called the country club. I didn't need to know their menu or decor. I needed something else, the guest list. It wasn't easy. They don't just give that kind of thing out. but I called as a vendor, pretending to be confirming details on behalf of Mr. Archer. After a few polite questions, I got what I needed: the event planner's name, the head of catering, and the name of the event photographer. That last one mattered, because in my pocket, I had a copy of the magazine article, the one that painted me as a respected local entrepreneur. And in the back of that article was a note: photography by Kara Bishop. Same photographer, same woman who'd done my article. I called her that afternoon. "Ryan Archer," she said brightly. "That feature of you got more clicks than anything I've done all year. You look like a guy who knew what he was doing." "I try," I said with a small laugh. "Listen, I hear you're shooting my brother's engagement party this weekend." She paused. "Oh, didn't know he had a brother." "Yeah, happens a lot." Then I explained my situation, not the dirty parts, just enough to say, "Would you mind if I had a quick chat with you during the event? Just 5 minutes. No drama. I promise." She agreed. And that's when the final piece fell into place. The story didn't need me to scream or flip tables. All I had to do was show up, let them pretend I was invisible, and then make sure everyone watched what happened next. The day of the engagement party arrived bright and cloudless. The kind of day my mother would call perfect for photos. I'd never been to this country club before, the kind with valet parking, polished stone fountains, and manicured hedges trimmed within an inch of their life. But I didn't show up in a designer tuxedo or anything flashy. I wore exactly what I'd worn in the article's photo shoot: dark jeans, pressed white shirt, tailored navy jacket. Clean, sharp, unpretentious. I wasn't there to impress. I was there to make a point. The valet opened my door like I was royalty. I gave him a nod and stepped inside. And immediately, I saw it: the illusion. Crystal glasses clinking, strings of fairy lights twinkling in the afternoon sun, guests milling around in pastel dresses and polished shoes. My family's friends. My mother's circle. Caleb's new world. And I was the ghost again, the stranger walking through a painting he didn't belong in. But not this time. I spotted Kara, the photographer, near the back patio, adjusting her lens. When she saw me, her eyes lit up in recognition, and she gave me a quick nod. Then, without a word, she angled her lens and snapped a few photos of me walking through the event. That would come in handy later. I headed straight for the drinks table and poured myself a glass of sparkling water. I knew the moment they saw me. You could feel it. Heads turning. Whispers. Then, like a curtain parting, my mother approached. Her smile was tight, frozen in place. "Ryan," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "Didn't expect you to come after all." I sipped my water. Why wouldn't I come? Family event, right? She glanced around, clearly uncomfortable that we were already drawing attention. "Well, we just weren't sure you got the message." We finalized the seating and, "I don't need a seat," I said calmly. "I won't be staying that long." Her jaw tightened, but before she could reply, Caleb appeared. He looked good. I'll give him that. Expensive suit, clean shave, confident smile. The golden boy. The groom-to-be. "Hey," he said, almost breezy. "Didn't think you'd make it, man." "Yeah," I replied. "A lot of that going around." He chuckled awkwardly. "Listen, I know things got weird. Mom told me you were upset about the money stuff. It's a misunderstanding. It's over now, right?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You don't have to lie, Caleb. I know what you did." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just pulled the envelope from inside my jacket. Not the full binder, just the summary page with the key evidence. The timestamps. The IP logs. His name in the document metadata. The damning invoice. And on top, a simple cover sheet with the title: "Attempted Financial Fraud, Internal Summary." I handed it to him slowly. He looked down at it, scanned the top page, and his face paled. Mom snatched it from his hand, skimmed it, and immediately turned to me. "What is this supposed to be? Some stunt?" "No," I said quietly. "It's evidence. I've already filed a preliminary report with my legal counsel. If I wanted, I could take this to the police today. You want to talk about stunts? That wire transfer attempt could have sunk my business. Do you even understand what that would have done to me?" People were looking now. Guests paused, glancing toward us from the buffet, the terrace, the open bar. And just as Mom reached for her default response, the smile, the fake laugh, the "he's just being dramatic," she saw Kara. Camera raised. Watching. Filming. Kara had taken a position just a few feet away, not intruding, not interfering, just capturing the moment. And that's when it all started to fall apart. Put that away, Mom hissed at her. Kara didn't move. I hired her, I said evenly. She's working, and I wanted her to document everything. Not just your decorations and Caleb's tie, but the real story. The one no one in this family talks about. Caleb looked like he wanted to disappear. Ryan, please. Can we talk privately? Funny, I said. Private's how this all started. I think public is better. A hush had settled over the crowd now. Someone even turned down the music. I could feel the tension coil tight, like a spring, ready to snap. But I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just turned toward the guests, their friends, their donors, their social club elite, and raised my voice just enough to carry. Sorry to interrupt. I won't keep you. But I thought you should all know, the bride and groom have asked for financial contributions toward their celebration. And while I was apparently invited for that reason, I'd suggest caution. The last time they accessed my financial records, they didn't ask for permission. Gasps. A few murmured, "What?" from people nearby. I let it hang for a second. Then I turned back to my mother. You've spent years pretending I don't exist, laughing about my business, using me when it's convenient, tossing me aside when it's not. And now, when your favorite son commits a crime, you protect him. You cover it up. But not anymore. She tried to recover. This is ridiculous. You're making a scene at your brother's engagement. No, I cut in. You made the scene. You just didn't expect the camera to be pointed at you. I turned and walked away before she could speak again. Not rushed, not storming off, just done. Kara followed me out, still filming until we passed the valet. When I reached the end of the drive, the valet handed me my keys with a confused smile. Congratulations, he said. I smiled. Something like that. As I pulled away, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I felt clean. Because for the first time in my life, I hadn't just stood up to them. I had made sure they'd never be able to pretend I wasn't there again. And now? Now the fallout was just beginning. The fallout didn't explode overnight. It unraveled slowly, painfully, publicly, and piece by piece. By Monday morning, the engagement party was the only thing anyone in my mother's circle was talking about. Word spread like wildfire. A few short clips from Kara's footage had been quietly passed around their country club's Facebook group, just enough to show my mother's face frozen in that perfect mix of outrage and panic, and Caleb visibly choking on his own guilt. Kara never released anything publicly, but I didn't need her to. The mere fact that the footage existed was enough. My mother's reputation as the poised matriarch with the perfect family started to crumble at the edges. Her friends stopped calling. RSVPs to the wedding dropped off without explanation. One of the vendors pulled out a week later, citing concerns over payment. Then came the real blow. Jonathan, the forensic accountant, followed through on his end. He quietly sent a summarized report of the evidence to the board of the nonprofit where my mother volunteered, a very prestigious, very image-conscious organization she lived for. She wasn't charged with anything, of course. She hadn't committed the crime herself. But once the board saw her name tied to financial misconduct, even indirectly, they asked her to step down for the sake of optics. She didn't even get to finish the term she bragged about in every holiday card. As for Caleb, it got worse. His job offer, the big one in DC, was rescinded. I hadn't planned for that part. I hadn't sent the report anywhere near his employer. But someone must have Googled him. Companies vet their hires more than ever now, especially when the word fraud starts floating around in family gossip circles. He was blacklisted before he ever started. No one called to offer him another opportunity. And after a few awkward updates on LinkedIn, he went silent. I heard he tried to pick up some part-time consulting work. Freelance. Nothing stuck. He sent me an email a month later. Short. 2 lines. I messed up. I know. I'm sorry. Please don't destroy what's left. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He had already done that himself. And my parents? Well, after a few half-hearted attempts to patch things up, a forwarded meme from my dad, a birthday card from my mom signed love, always, they finally seemed to understand the truth. I wasn't coming back. Not to the holidays. Not to family dinners. Not to pick up the broken fan in the den. They'd burned the bridge, and for once, I didn't rush in with a fire extinguisher. Instead, I built something on the other side. Business boomed. New clients rolled in every week. People respected me, not because of my last name or my college degree, but because I did honest, good work. I hired 2 more employees, started mentoring local trade students, and even bought my own house on a quiet street with a wraparound porch and space for a garden. And on that porch, just last week, I got a letter in the mail. White envelope, handwritten address, no return label. Inside, an invitation. Caleb and Natalie's wedding. I looked at it for a long time. Then I walked it out back, lit a match, and let it burn to ash in the fire pit. No drama, no speeches, just closure. Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It's not about tearing someone down. It's about rising so high above the people who hurt you that they have no choice but to look up and finally see what they lost. And I promise you this, they saw.